Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
This time we're diving into a topic that I think is on everyone's minds these days.
Definitely.
Money, right. We're not talking about like personal finance tips or investment strategies or anything like that.
Right.
We're going deeper.
Much deeper.
Yeah, we're going to explore the philosophy of money.
Exactly.
And to help us do that, we're turning to the work of this really fascinating thinker, George Simmel.
Oh, yeah. Simmel's a great guide for this kind of exploration.
So we're using his book, The Philosophy of Money.
Definitely a classic.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever just stopped and thought about like the power money has over us? Like it's not just this thing we use to buy stuff. It's this force that shapes so much of our lives.
It really is. And that's what Simmel was getting at. He saw money as this hidden force driving so much of human behavior and social interaction.
Right, and he wasn't just talking about like the economics of it, but like the deeper psychological and sociological effects of money.
Exactly. He was interested in how money shapes our values, our relationships, the way we experience the world.
Yeah, and one of the things that really struck me when I was reading Simmel was how he talks about the evolution of money, you know, from like bartering to coins to paper money to like the digital currencies we have today.
Oh, yeah. That's a key part of his theory, this idea that as money evolved, it became more and more abstract.
Right, like we're so far removed from like trading actual goods for other goods.
Exactly. And Simmel argued that this abstraction has some really interesting consequences, both positive and negative.
Well, yeah, let's break that down because on the one hand, you could argue that money makes things more efficient. Like we don't have to carry around chickens and goats to trade for things anymore.
Right. It simplifies transactions and it creates a common measure of value, which is essential for a complex economy.
But Simmel also pointed out that this abstraction can create a distance between us and the real value of things.
Absolutely. Think about it. When you're swiping a credit card, it's easy to forget about the actual work and resources that went into producing whatever you're buying.
It's almost like we become numb to the true cost of things.
In a way, yeah. And that can have all sorts of implications for how we consume, how we value our own labor, how we relate to the environment.
So it's not just this neutral tool, it's something that shapes our perceptions and our behaviors in really profound ways.
Exactly. And that's what makes Simmel's work so fascinating. He's not just talking about money in this dry economic sense. He's talking about how it intersects with all these other aspects of human life.
It's like money is this mirror reflecting back to us our values, our desires, our anxieties.
I like that it's a mirror reflecting our humanity.
And speaking of reflections, one of the things that Simmel talks about is how money can create this illusion of freedom.
Oh, yeah. That's a really interesting point.
He argues that in a way, money liberates us from traditional social structures.
Mm.
In the past, people were often tied to specific roles or communities based on their family or their trade.
Right? Like you were born into a certain class and you were pretty much stuck there.
But money allows for more social mobility, right? People can move to new cities, pursue different careers, reinvent themselves in ways that weren't possible before.
Exactly. It creates more opportunities, more choices, more individual freedom.
But there's a catch,
Right.
right? Because Simmel also talks about how money creates new forms of dependency.
He did. Yeah, there's a paradox there.
So we might be free to choose our career path, but we're still bound by the need to earn a living, to pay our bills, to keep up with this, like, ever-increasing cost of living.
Right. It's like we're trading one set of constraints for another.
And that makes me think about, like, the gig economy, where people have more flexibility but often lack the security and benefits of traditional jobs.
That's a perfect example. Simmel's ideas are so relevant to how we're living and working today.
Yeah, it's like this constant tension between freedom and constraint, individual choice, and systemic forces.
And money is right at the heart of that tension.
So it's not this simple thing, right? It's this complex force
Yeah.
that shapes our lives in both positive and negative ways.
And I think that's what makes it so important to understand not just the economics of money, but also the philosophy, the psychology, the sociology of it.
Yeah, if we don't understand how money is shaping us, we're kind of at its mercy.
We become slaves to the system.
And Simmel was really trying to wake people up to that, right? To get them to think critically about their relationship with money.
Exactly. He wanted us to be more conscious, more intentional, more ethical in how we use it.
Okay, so we've talked about the evolution of money and this paradox of freedom. What are some of the other key insights that Simmel offers?
Well, one of the things he's most known for is this idea that money puts a price tag on everything.
Right, yeah, that's a big one and kind of unsettling when you think about it.
It is, and it gets to the heart of what we value as a society.
Right, like we put a dollar value on things like education, healthcare, art. even our own time.
It's like everything can be reduced to a monetary value.
And that makes you wonder, right? Are we oversimplifying human desires and values by reducing everything to a number?
That's a question that Simmel grappled with. He saw how money can create this illusion of objectivity.
Yeah.
Like we can measure and compare things that are inherently subjective and qualitative.
It's like trying to quantify beauty or love or happiness. Can you really put a price tag on those things?
Right, and that's the danger Simmel was highlighting. He saw how money could be used to manipulate and exploit, to create false hierarchies, and to distort our sense of what's truly valuable.
It's like we're constantly bombarded with messages telling us that happiness is just a purchase away.
But Simmel reminds us that true fulfillment often lies in things that money can't buy, like genuine connections, meaningful experiences, a sense of purpose.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in this cycle of wanting more, more, more. But Simmel was urging us to step back and ask ourselves what really matters.
To examine our values, to be more conscious consumers, to resist the seductive power of money.
And that's a really important message, especially in today's world where we're constantly being told to buy, buy, buy.
We need to be more critical, more discerning, more intentional in how we relate to money.
And Simmel gives us the tools to do that.
He really does. His work is so relevant to the challenges we're facing today.
So we've talked about how money puts a price tag on everything, but Simmel also explored another really interesting concept, conspicuous consumption.
Ah, yes, that's a classic Simmel idea.
And it's something we see all around us, right? People buying things not for their practical value, but to display their wealth or their status.
Exactly. It's about keeping up with the Joneses, trying to impress others, showing off your success.
Think designer clothes, luxury cars, those extravagant vacations that people post all over social media.
It's all about signaling your place in the social hierarchy.
And Simmel argued that this conspicuous consumption is driven by a desire for recognition, for validation, for a sense of belonging.
Right. It's his need to feel like you're part of the in crowd that you've made it.
But it often leads to this like never-ending cycle of wanting more, because there's always someone with a bigger house, a fancier car, a more expensive watch.
And it can be really empty, right? It's like you're chasing this external validation, but it never really satisfies.
It's like a hamster wheel. You keep running and running, but you're not really getting anywhere.
And Simmel was warning us about that. He saw how this pursuit of status and material possessions could distract us from what's truly important.
From cultivating genuine connections, from pursuing our passions, from finding meaning and purpose beyond the material world.
And that's a message that I think we need to hear today more than ever.
Absolutely, because we're living in a culture that's so obsessed with money and status and material possessions.
And it's easy to get caught up in that, right? To feel like you need to have all the latest gadgets and the fanciest clothes to be happy.
But Simmel reminds us that true happiness comes from within, from living a life that's aligned with our values, from pursuing our passions, from connecting with others in meaningful ways.
He was a real advocate for living a more authentic and fulfilling life.
And I think that's a message that resonates with a lot of people today.
It does. There's a growing sense that maybe we've gone too far in this pursuit of material wealth, that maybe we've lost sight of what really matters.
And Simmel's work offers a way back to those core values.
It does. It gives us a framework for thinking about money in a more balanced and ethical way.
So it's not about rejecting money altogether, but about putting it in its proper place,
About using it as a tool to create a better life for ourselves and for others.
rather than letting it control us.
Exactly. About being conscious and intentional in how we relate to money.
So that's a great overview of some of Simmel's key ideas.
There's so much more to explore, though. His work is really rich and nuanced.
Yeah, I'm already feeling like my mind is expanding.
That's the Simmel effect.
He really challenges us to think differently about money and its role in our lives.
And that's what makes him such a valuable guide for this deep dive. You know, one thing that really sticks with me from Simmel is this concept of the objectification of life.
The objectification of life.
Yeah, it's like when we put a price tag on everything, we start to see even complex human experiences in these like simple, quantifiable terms.
I see how that ties into what we were talking about before with putting a price on art and beauty and all that. But what does this objectification look like in our everyday lives?
Well, think about it. Like, how do we measure success in our society? Often it's all about like how much money you earn, right? Or the stuff you own.
Yeah, the car you drive, the house you live in.
Exactly. But what about those things that are harder to measure, like love or creativity or purpose?
The things that really give life meaning.
Exactly. And Simmel was worried that we were losing sight of those things in this rush to accumulate wealth and status.
Like we're so focused on the numbers, we forget about what really matters.
Right. And he saw this as a kind of spiritual emptiness, a sense of dissatisfaction, even when you achieve material success.
Like you're chasing this illusion of happiness, but it's always just out of reach.
That's a great way to put it. And he was also concerned about how this focus on money distorts our values.
Distorts our values.
Yeah, he talked about this tension between intrinsic values and instrumental values.
Okay, I'm not familiar with those terms.
So intrinsic values are those things that are good in themselves, like love, beauty, truth, justice.
I see like those things that have value regardless of whether they bring you money or not.
Exactly. And then instrumental values are more about efficiency, profit, material gain.
Okay, so like the means to an end.
Right. And Simmel was worried that money was shifting our priorities, making us value the instrumental over the intrinsic.
So like we start to prioritize things that will make us money even if they don't align with our deeper values.
Exactly. It's like we're losing sight of the bigger picture.
And I can see how that's happening all around us. Like we're constantly being bombarded with messages telling us that we need to buy this or that to be happy.
But Simmel reminds us that true happiness comes from those intrinsic values, the things that money can't buy.
The things that give life meaning and purpose.
Exactly. And he saw a connection between this focus on money and the decline of traditional values and community ties.
Okay, so like as money became more important, other things became less important.
Right, like family relationships or a sense of belonging to a community.
So it's not just about individuals, it's about how money shapes our social structures.
Exactly. And he was worried that this focus on individual achievement and economic success was leading to a fragmentation of society.
Like we're all just isolated individuals competing with each other.
And he saw this as a real threat to our well-being, both individually and collectively.
So it's not just about making money, it's about creating a society that values connection and cooperation and compassion.
And he believed that money could actually be used to achieve those goals.
Okay, so it's not about demonizing money, it's about using it wisely.
Exactly. It's about recognizing its power and using it for good.
And one of the ways he saw money being used for good was through philanthropy.
Oh, yeah. He was a big believer in using wealth to benefit society.
So like donating to charities or funding social programs.
Exactly. He saw it as a moral obligation for those who had wealth to give back to the community.
And he also talked about ethical investing, right?
Yeah, like investing in companies that are socially responsible or environmentally sustainable.
It's using your money to support businesses that are doing good in the world.
And he also saw the potential for social entrepreneurship.
Like starting businesses that are designed to address social problems.
Right. So using the power of the market to create positive change.
So it's not just about making a profit, it's about making a difference.
And I think that's a really important message, especially today when we're facing so many challenges.
Like climate change and inequality and political polarization.
Simmel believed that we need to find ways to use money to create a more just and sustainable world.
A world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
And he saw money as a tool that could be used to achieve those goals.
So it's not about rejecting money, it's about using it wisely and ethically.
It's about recognizing its power and directing it towards positive change.
That's a really empowering message, I think.
It is. It gives us agency. It reminds us that we're not just passive victims of the system.
We can actually shape the system.
And Simmel's work gives us the tools to do that.
It's like a roadmap for creating a better world.
And he also talked about the importance of personal responsibility.
Like making conscious choices about how we earn and spend our money.
Exactly, being mindful of our impact on others and on the planet.
So it's not just about systems, it's about individual actions.
Because every choice we make, every dollar we spend sends a message.
It's a vote for the kind of world we want to live in.
And Simmel believed that we have the power to create a more just and equitable world.
A world where money serves humanity rather than the other way around.
And that's a vision worth striving for.
Absolutely. I think Simmel would be proud of us for having this conversation.
I think so too. He was all about critical thinking and open dialogue.
And he would probably encourage us to keep questioning, keep exploring, keep challenging the status quo.
And to never lose sight of our values.
And to remember that money is just a tool.
A tool that can be used for good or for evil.
It's up to us to decide how we wield it.
And I think that's a really powerful message to end on.
You know, it's amazing how Simmel connects money to like religion and art and even language.
Yeah, he was really fascinated by how these symbolic systems shape our worldview, you know?
It's like he's urging us to see money as this powerful symbolic system, not just like dollar bills and cents.
Exactly. Money, like language, gives us a way to assign meaning and value to things. It allows us to communicate and interact in really complex ways.
But it can also distort our perceptions, right?
Absolutely. It can create a kind of artificial reality where we start to see everything through this lens of monetary value.
So are you saying that money can actually, like, create a disconnect between how we perceive the world and how it really is?
That was a big concern for Simmel. He saw how the focus on monetary value could lead us to overlook the intrinsic worth of things that can't be easily quantified or commodified.
It's like we're reducing the richness and complexity of life to a series of transactions.
Right, and we start to see relationships, experiences, even ourselves, through this narrow lens of economic value.
It's almost like we become cogs in this giant economic machine.
Rather than fully realized human beings with unique talents, passions, aspirations.
Yeah, and Simmel was a big advocate for individual expression and the cultivation of our inner lives.
He believed that true fulfillment comes from pursuing those things that give us meaning and purpose, not just from accumulating wealth.
So it's not about rejecting money altogether.
Right. It's about finding that balance between our material needs and our spiritual aspirations.
And he also saw this connection between the rise of money and the decline of traditional values in community ties.
Yeah, he was worried that the emphasis on individual achievement and economic success was leading to a fragmentation of society,
It's like we're all on our own little islands pursuing our own self-interests.
rather than working together to create a more just and equitable society.
And Simmel believed that we need to find ways to balance our individual pursuits with a sense of social responsibility.
Especially those who have wealth, they have a moral obligation to use it wisely and to contribute to the common good.
So it's not just about making money, it's about making a difference.
Exactly. It's about using our resources to create a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
And his work offers a powerful critique of the inequalities and injustices that are often perpetuated by our current economic system.
He was calling for a more ethical and equitable approach to money.
One that benefits all of humanity, not just a select few.
And I think that's a message that's more relevant than ever today.
Absolutely, we're facing so many challenges that are rooted in our economic system.
Climate change, inequality, political polarization.
And Simmel's work gives us a framework for thinking about these issues in a new way.
It challenges us to question our assumptions, to examine our values, to make choices that align with our aspirations for a better world.
It's been an incredibly thought-provoking deep dive.
Simmel's ideas are so rich and nuanced, they really make you think.
And they're so relevant to our lives today.
He was truly ahead of his time.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
I think Simmel would urge us to be more mindful of our relationship with money.
To examine how it's shaping our values, our choices, our lives.
And to use it as a force for good in the world.
To create a more just equitable and sustainable future.
Because ultimately money is just a tool.
It's up to us to decide how we wield it.
Well said. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure, and thanks to all of you for listening. We hope this deep dive has inspired you to think differently about money and its role in your life. And maybe the next time you reach for your wallet, you'll see more than just dollar signs. You'll see a reflection of yourself, your values, and your potential to make a difference in the world.